There are truths the mind was never meant to hold. Some knowledge waits patiently, buried beneath oceans, dreams, and forgotten names, and sometimes, by accident, someone uncovers a pattern that should have remained hidden forever. The Call of Cthulhu begins with the papers of a man named Francis Wayland Thurston, who inherits a strange collection of documents after the sudden death of his granduncle, Professor George Gammell, Angel of Brown University. The professor had been a respected authority on ancient languages and archaeology, known for his rational mind and careful scholarship, yet among his belongings, Thurston discovers something deeply unusual, a series of notes, clippings, and testimonies, all connected by a single, unsettling word, Cthulhu. At first, the material seems disjointed and confusing. There are references to dreams, strange cults, and a grotesque stone carving, but as Thurston begins to organize the documents, he realizes that his uncle had been quietly investigating a mystery that spanned continents, cultures, and decades. The earliest piece of evidence concerns a young sculptor named Henry Anthony Wilcox. In March of 1925, Wilcox visits Professor Angel carrying a small but disturbing bas-relief he claims to have sculpted from a vivid dream. The object depicts a monstrous figure, part dragon, part octopus, part human, standing before strange, impossible architecture. The design is unfamiliar, yet it carries an unsettling sense of ancient authenticity. Wilcox explains that he has been experiencing intense dreams of vast, ancient cities and a towering, winged creature. These dreams feel more like memories than imagination. He also speaks strange words and phrases he cannot consciously understand, one of which sounds like Cthulhu. He does not understand its meaning. However, he is intrigued. Professor Angel begins recording Wilcox's experiences. Soon after, however, the sculptor falls into a feverish delirium, muttering in unknown languages and describing colossal structures rising from the sea. During this time, similar disturbances begin appearing elsewhere. Artists, poets, and sensitive individuals across the world report unsettling dreams filled with alien landscapes and immense blooming presences. Then, as suddenly as it began, the phenomenon fades. Wilcox recovers, remembering little of what he said during his illness. Though strange, the incident might have remained an odd curiosity, if not for something Professor Angel uncovers months later, while attending an archaeological conference. Angel is approached by Inspector John Raymond Legrasse of the New Orleans Police. Legrasse had once participated in a raid on a remote swamp gathering years earlier, where authorities had discovered a secretive cult performing disturbing rituals. During that raid, the police seized a small idol, one that closely resembles Wilcox's sculpture. The idol depicts the same grotesque being, a creature with a pulpy, tentacled head, a scaly body, and folded wings. Its craftsmanship appears ancient and unlike any known cultural style. None of the experts at the conference can identify its origin. Legrasse recounts what happened during the raid. Acting on reports of strange disappearances and eerie chanting, the police had ventured deep into the Louisiana swamps. There, hidden among the trees, they found a group of men engaged in a ritual around a stone altar. The cultists came from diverse backgrounds, sailors, outcasts, and individuals from different ethnic groups, yet all were united by their devotion to the same unknown entity. When questioned, they spoke of ancient beings older than humanity, beings that once ruled the earth before mankind existed. Their chants included a phrase repeated with reverence and fear, Fanglui Maglana Faton. Through interrogation of one particularly knowledgeable member named Old Castro, the police learned fragments of the cult's belief. They worshipped entities known as the Great Old Ones, cosmic beings who were descended from the stars long before human history. These beings were not dead, the cult insisted, but sleeping, waiting for the time when the stars would be right. One of these beings, Cthulhu, lay entombed beneath the ocean in a submerged city called Roulé. The cult believed that sensitive minds could hear Cthulhu's call through dreams. Artists, visionaries, and the mentally unstable were said to be especially vulnerable. This revelation deeply unsettles Professor Angel, particularly because it aligns with Wilcox's earlier dreams. He begins compiling historical records and finds references across centuries, strange legends, unexplained rituals, and scattered mentions of monstrous beings waiting beneath the sea. But before he can complete his research, Professor Angel dies suddenly after being knocked down by a sailor in a crowded street. Though officially ruled an accident, the circumstances strike Thurston as suspicious, especially given what he has now learned. Determined to uncover the truth, Thurston continues his uncle's investigation. He finds a newspaper article from Sydney, Australia, describing a derelict ship found in the South Pacific with a lone, delirious survivor, a Norwegian sailor named Gustav Johansen. Thurston travels to Oslo to find Johansen, only to discover the sailor died mysteriously shortly after returning home. However, Johansen left behind a manuscript in English. The document recounts how his crew, aboard the schooner Emma, encountered a hostile ship called the Alert. After a bloody battle, the survivors of the Emma discovered a massive, slime-covered stone pillar rising from the ocean, the peak of a sunken city. The city was unlike anything human architecture could produce. Its angles seemed wrong, its proportions impossible, surfaces sloped in ways that confused perception, as though the geometry itself defied natural law. As the sailors explored the structure, a great stone door began to open. From within emerged something colossal. Johansen describes a towering entity with a massive tentacled head, immense wings, and a body that seemed both solid and fluid at once. The presence of the creature overwhelmed the senses, radiating an ancient and incomprehensible power. Panic spread among the crew, some fled, others froze in terror. Johansen and one remaining sailor attempted to escape aboard their ship, but the being moved with terrifying speed despite its immense size. In desperation, Johansen steered directly toward it, ramming Cthulhu's head with the vessel. For a moment, the impact seemed to disperse its form, yet the entity began to reassemble itself, as though physical damage meant nothing to it. The sailors managed to flee as the city slowly sank back beneath the ocean, taking the creature with it. Johansen was later found alone at sea. The sole survivor, his account was written shortly before his death under unclear circumstances. After reviewing all the evidence, the dreams, the cult, the ancient idol, and Johansen's testimony, Thurston reaches a chilling conclusion. Cthulhu is real. It is not a myth or metaphor, but a vast, ancient being lying dormant beneath the Pacific Ocean in the submerged city of R'lyeh. The dreams experienced by sensitive individuals are not imagination, but psychic echoes, signals from a mind so immense it can reach across the world even in its sleep. The scattered cults throughout history are remnants of a hidden, enduring worship, groups who remember what humanity has forgotten. Thurston realizes that the brief period of global dreams in 1925 coincided with the temporary rising of R'lyeh. When the city surfaced, Cthulhu's influence strengthened. When it sank again, the dreams faded. But the most terrifying implication is this: the creature is not dead, it is only sleeping, waiting for the stars to align once more. Thurston ends his account with growing dread. He believes his uncle's death may not have been accidental. He fears that those who worship Cthulhu may silence anyone who learns too much. More than that, he fears something far greater, that one day the city will rise again. And when it does, humanity will not be facing a monster to be defeated, but a force so ancient and vast that human civilization would mean nothing before it. The documents conclude with a final quiet terror, the knowledge that the truth is now recorded, and that simply understanding it may be enough to draw attention from things that were never meant to be noticed. He accepts he will likely be taken care of by the cult. H.P. Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu is not merely a story about an ancient creature sleeping beneath the ocean. It is a carefully constructed meditation on humanity's place in the universe. One that replaces traditional horrors, ghosts, and monsters with something far more unsettling: the possibility that human existence is insignificant. At its core, the story is an exploration of what later became known as cosmic horror, a genre Lovecraft did not invent, but undeniably defined. Instead of presenting evil as something that can be fought, escaped, or destroyed, the narrative suggests that the greatest terror lies in knowledge itself, specifically, knowledge that reveals how small and fragile humanity truly is. Most traditional horror relies on immediate danger, a killer, a monster, a curse. These threats can be confronted, resisted, or at least understood. In the Call of Cthulhu, however, the central fear is existential rather than physical. The true terror is not that something dangerous exists, but that it exists on a scale so vast that humanity barely registers. The entity at the center of the story is not portrayed as malicious in the way human villains are. It does not scheme against humanity or seek revenge. Instead, it represents something older than civilization itself, an intelligence so alien that human concepts like morality, intention, or cruelty may not even apply. This is what makes the story deeply unsettling. It suggests that the universe is not structured around human meaning. Instead, humanity exists as a temporary, fragile presence in a cosmos filled with forces that neither notice nor care. Lovecraft's fear is not of death, it is of irrelevance. Throughout the narrative, information is uncovered piece by piece through documents, testimonies, and artifacts. This structure is deliberate, rather than presenting a single event. The story becomes an investigation, one that mirrors the experience of scientific discovery. Each fragment adds clarity, but also deepens the dread. The more the narrator learns, the worse things become. This reflects a recurring theme in Lovecraft's work. Some truths are harmful simply because they are true. The danger does not lie in what the characters do, but in what they understand. Unlike many horror stories where ignorance leads to danger, here ignorance is protective. The characters who remain unaware continue their lives normally. Those who uncover the hidden reality become isolated, paranoid, or doomed. This inversion challenges the Enlightenment ideal that knowledge is always beneficial. Lovecraft proposes the opposite, that there may be truths humanity is psychologically incapable of handling. In this way, the story reflects early 20th century anxieties surrounding rapid scientific advancement. As humanity began uncovering the vastness of space, the age of the Earth, and the complexity of evolution, long-held beliefs about human centrality were being dismantled. The Call of Cthulhu transforms that intellectual discomfort into horror. A recurring element in the story is that certain individuals, particularly artists, poets, and those considered mentally unstable, are more susceptible to the influence of the unknown. This is not accidental. Lovecraft often portrayed creative or emotionally receptive minds as being more open to perceiving truths that rational society ignores. In this narrative, dreams act as a kind of signal, a channel through which something ancient communicates without language. Dreams are important because they bypass logic. They represent a space where the subconscious is exposed, where the mind cannot rely on reason or structure. By using dreams as the method of influence, Lovecraft implies that the human psyche is far less secure than we believe. The idea that thoughts can be affected from outside, without consent or awareness, introduces another layer of fear, loss of mental autonomy. The horror is not just that something exists, but that it can reach into the most private space a person has, their own mind. Lovecraft famously believed that the oldest and strongest form of fear is fear of the unknown. The Call of Cthulhu embodies this principle in nearly every aspect. The creature is never fully explained. Its origins are only hinted at. The civilization connected to it is described in fragments. Even the language associated with it is intentionally incomprehensible. This deliberate vagueness serves a purpose. When something is fully defined, it becomes manageable. When it remains partially hidden, the imagination fills the gaps, and what the mind creates is often more frightening than any explicit description. Lovecraft's technique is to provide just enough detail to suggest scale without offering clarity. The reader is left with impressions rather than facts. Vastness, age, alien geometry, impossible structures. This creates a sense that reality itself may be unreliable. Another defining feature of the story is its rejection of a human-centered viewpoint. Most narratives assume that humanity is important, that events revolve around human actions. Here, humanity is merely a brief interruption in a much longer cosmic timeline. The ancient beings described are not recent arrivals. They existed long before human civilization and may continue long after it disappears. This shift in perspective is deeply unsettling because it removes the comforting assumption that humans are the main characters of existence. Instead, humanity becomes background noise. This idea reflects broader philosophical movements of Lovecraft's time, particularly the growing awareness of deep time, geological and cosmic scales that dwarf human history. By placing humanity within that scale, the story forces readers to confront a question rarely explored in earlier horror. What if we are not important at all? The story is told through collected documents, reports, and testimonies rather than a single continuous narrative. This structure serves several purposes. First, it creates realism. The presentation mimics academic research or investigative journalism, making the events feel plausible despite their impossibility. Second, it reinforces uncertainty. No single narrator witnesses everything. Each account is partial, incomplete, or secondhand. This mirrors how real mysteries are uncovered, through fragments that never fully align. Third, it reflects the psychological state of the investigator. The more he pieces together, the less stable the world appears. The structure itself becomes a metaphor for forbidden knowledge, scattered, hidden, and dangerous to assemble. The presence of secret groups devoted to ancient beings introduces another theme: the persistence of forgotten truths. These cults exist across cultures and continents, suggesting that certain ideas never fully disappear, even when civilizations change. Fragments of older beliefs survive in hidden forms. This reflects a fear that beneath modern society lies something older and less rational. The cultists in the Call of Cthulhu are not portrayed as masterminds. Instead, they are portrayed as inheritors, people who remember something humanity at large has chosen to forget. This introduces a disturbing possibility. that progress does not erase the past, it merely buries it. The setting connected to the ancient city is not random. The ocean is one of the most effective symbols of the unknown, even today. Large portions of Earth's oceans remain unexplored. In Lovecraft's time, they were even more mysterious. The sea represents depth, concealment, and ancient history. It is a place where things can exist unseen for millennia. By placing the central threat beneath the water, Lovecraft taps into a primal fear. The idea that something enormous could exist just out of sight. The ocean also functions metaphorically as the subconscious of the world, vast, dark, and filled with remnants of the past. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the story is that the central force is not driven by hatred. Human beings are used to interpreting danger as intentional. We understand enemies, predators, and rivals, but an indifferent force cannot be reasoned with. If something does not care whether humanity survives or disappears, then human values, justice, morality, purpose, lose their protective power. This idea strips away the comforting notion that the universe has meaning aligned with human existence. Instead, existence becomes accidental. Written in the early 20th century, the story reflects a period of profound uncertainty. Scientific discoveries were expanding humanity's understanding of space and time at an unprecedented rate. World War I had shattered assumptions about progress and civilization. Industrialization was rapidly transforming society. People were beginning to realize that humanity was not at the center of creation, that the universe was far older and larger than previously imagined. Lovecraft transformed these intellectual shocks into narrative horror. Rather than presenting scientific progress as empowering, he portrayed it as destabilizing, each new discovery widening the gap between human perception and cosmic reality. Despite being nearly a century old, the Call of Cthulhu remains influential because its core fear is timeless. Technology changes, culture evolves, but the fundamental question, what if we are not alone, and what if what's out there is beyond comprehension, never loses its power. Modern audiences may no longer fear ancient idols or forgotten cults in the same way, but the deeper anxieties remain. The vastness of space, the possibility of unknown intelligences, the limits of human perception, the fragility of sanity when confronted with overwhelming truth. Lovecraft's story endures because it does not rely on a specific monster. It relies on an idea, and ideas do not age. If one removes the creature entirely, the structure of the story still functions as horror, because the true antagonist is not a physical being. It is the realization that reality is far stranger and more indifferent than humanity wants to believe. The creature simply gives form to that realization. It is a symbol of everything humanity cannot control, cannot understand, and cannot survive on equal terms. In that sense, the story is less about a sleeping entity and more about a waking awareness. We like to believe we live in an age of answers. We carry the world's knowledge in our pockets. We map the ocean floor with machines. We scan distant galaxies with telescopes powerful enough to see light that began traveling before human history. And yet, the more we discover, the larger the darkness becomes. We now know there are more stars than grains of sand on Earth. We know most of the universe is made of something we cannot see or touch. We know our planet has endured extinction after extinction, and will someday face another. Lovecraft's terror was never really about something waiting beneath the ocean. It was about the moment when humanity realizes it is not in control. Today, that fear has new shapes. It lives in the silence between radio signals from space, in the algorithms we barely understand but trust with our lives, in the knowledge that a single cosmic event, a flare, an asteroid, a distant explosion, could erase centuries in an instant. We stand surrounded by information, yet still stare into mysteries we cannot solve. And that is why this story still lingers. Because the most frightening possibility is not that monsters exist, but that the universe is vast, ancient, and utterly indifferent, and that somewhere, beyond the edges of what we can measure, something may already be awake, waiting for the moment we finally notice it looking back.